Hello and welcome to my channel. I am your host Jake, and this is Redneck Reacts, the channel where I react to anything from music to videos of all kinds. Today we'll be working on disturbing history. Taking some darker turn for a little bit, just to broaden my horizons on human practices from the past. Alright, let's get into it.
In our number 10 spot today, we have the Masters of Fire. For a long time, it was believed that our prehistoric human ancestors were the ones who discovered fire, but as it turns out, that just isn't true. The evidence now suggests that Homo erectus, which were the first of our ancestors to walk upright and use tools, are actually the ones who can claim the title of Master of Fire. These guys were the first to learn how to produce a controlled flame and really paved the way for us to harness the power that fire can bring. Researchers have found fire pits in Africa that they have been able to date back 2 million years, which is absolutely wild. We certainly owe a lot to our evolutionary ancestors and all their discoveries, as well as to researchers who help us get a glimpse into what life was like all the way back then. In our number 9 spot today, we have blue eyes. We have known for a while that blue eyes are a genetic mutation, as we once lived in a world where everyone had brown eyes, but what I didn't know is just how far back this mutation goes. The crazy thing is that every single person today with blue eyes, myself included, can be traced back to one single common ancestor from thousands and thousands of years ago. That is pretty wild when you really think about it. While blue eyes are more rare than we think, it is thought that this trait only survived because of the fact that these blue eyes were seen as highly attractive, which ensured that those with the blue eyes had no trouble finding a partner to procreate with. I'm extremely grateful that things didn't go the opposite way and it wasn't considered a horrendous mutation, or that there wasn't some scary belief that those with blue eyes were cursed, because if that was the case, our world would have been a lot different. I mean, at least in terms of eye color. In our number 8 spot today, we have relationship transformation. Our early human ancestors lived mostly nomadic lives, but at some point there began to be a transition into a more settled life. With this settlement came agriculture and property, which also means inheritance. This completely changed the way we looked at relationships and procreation. In the more nomadic times, monogamy wasn't really a thing because why? It wouldn't necessarily matter, and it was the norm for both males and females to have multiple sexual partners. The idea of monogamy just didn't really exist, but with the shift of civilization came the shift in this way of thinking. Now that people have homes and things, knowing who your children are becomes a lot more important to people. It's not like this shift happened overnight, but it certainly made quite the change for those who were living during these times. This undoubtedly has affected the way we live our lives and the more modern view of family and relationships. Who knows what our world would look like if this specific change never occurred. In our number 7 spot today, we have sharing the earth. Evolution isn't a linear process. This might seem obvious, but it's something that not everyone has taken time to consider. This means that our early human ancestors, the early Homo sapiens, lived on Earth with our even earlier evolutionary ancestors, such as the Homo floresiensis, which is more colloquially referred to as the Hobbit. That is absolute insanity to think about. We mostly know about Neanderthals. Thinking about these other hominins existing at the same time is very interesting. It is thought that we continued to live among them as recently as 15,000 years ago. In our number 6 spot today, we have man's best friend. We all know dogs are man's best friend.
Let's take a quick pause right here. There was some research back a couple years ago that I read up that there was actually maybe 7 or 8 different human species living with us during the time that she was talking about, and the Homo sapien actually drove them to extinction, every single one of them, or procreated enough where they kind of merged with our own. Just bring that out there because a lot of people don't know that.
friend, but just how far back does this bond go? Well, as it turns out, way farther than you may have thought. Evidence shows that around 15,000 years ago, humans began domesticating wolves, which would eventually lead us to dogs. It is thought that the Eurasian gray wolf was the first of all the wolves to be domesticated, although little is known about why this practice originated. There is speculation that it may have happened unintentionally, as the early humans may have shared excess meat with the wolves, which then led to a mutually beneficial relationship or a companionship. Others thought that they were simply domesticated in order to help the early humans hunt. At the end of the day, we may never know for sure, but we do know that the earliest known dog burial dates back to 14,200 years ago. So by that time, dogs were certainly well loved by humans. In our number 5 spot today, we have travel. Thousands and thousands of years ago, the early humans set out to explore areas of the world that they had not been yet, but this was an extreme challenge for them as it involved crossing the sea. The settlement of Australia is the earliest evidence we have of major sea crossing, and it is considered to be one of the greatest achievements the early humans made. It is, however, unclear if the goal was to reach Australia or if these people just got caught up in wind and waves and luckily arrived on land. It is assumed that the boats used were made out of bamboo, but researchers will likely never know for sure. There is some evidence that suggests that the early humans may have reached Australia as early as 120,000 years ago, but we know for sure that it was at least 65,000 years ago, which is still quite a feat. It is highly, highly unlikely that the early humans made it on this voyage on their first try, so we can only imagine how many people lost their lives in an attempt to explore our Earth. Who knows what would have happened?
Don't forget the Great Land Bridges too. There was a bridge, linking the Americas with Eurasia together, and a lot of the human race crossed over onto that side. And then I believe some also probably crossed over from the Asian side over to populate the islands that way. But I always find something interesting between the Americas going towards Asia. In a certain part of the continents, everyone has some kind of link together. Like you got the Samoans, the people in Latin America, and then you got people up in mid North America, so like United States. Then you go up to upper North America, which is like Canada and Alaska and stuff like that. Every single person, like skin-wise, looks very similar and have very similar ancestry rituals and like worship similar gods at the same time. My belief is like a lot of those people broke off as soon as they got to the Americas and then went everywhere. So what my thing is, isn't most Latin Americans, North Americans, and Upper North Americans, aren't they usually kind of part of the same family? Just generations spread out. Just my dumb mind thinking about stuff like that all the time. Let's get back to it.
Happened if they never took these risks. In our number 4 spot today, we have the burial practices. Every culture has their own practices for the burial of people who have passed away, and it is usually part of some sort of ceremony or ritual, but this wasn't always necessarily the case. The early humans had quite a wide variety of burial practices, with some burials and graves being extremely lavish and well decorated, with others just being plain. Researchers have found that men were buried more often than women, and infants were only buried very sporadically and sometimes not even at all. Sometimes bodies would be buried with household items or ornaments that they would have worn while still alive, but researchers just can't seem to figure out exactly why there is such a variety in burials. They have said that there seems to be very little rhyme or reason to it, so it may possibly just be one of those things that is destined to be a mystery to us modern humans. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Neanderthals. For a long time, it was believed that our early human ancestors killed off Neanderthals, which is what led to Homo sapiens taking over, but that is most likely not true at all. Instead, we did interbreed with them, which may have swamped their genetics, but there are some other evolutionary things that may have naturally contributed to the disappearance of Neanderthals. Scientists have been able to come up with a 3D model for what the brain of a Neanderthal would have looked like, and have been able to compare that to the brain of an early human. While Neanderthals had bigger skulls, which meant bigger brains, humans have a much larger cerebellum. This is important since the cerebellum is responsible for so much, including movement and balance, to vision and learning, to language, and even mood. This means that we basically just may have had more flexible minds than Neanderthals, which allowed us to progress more quickly. We may have developed better hunting and foraging tactics quicker, as well as being able to develop technology at a higher rate. While we may never know for sure what caused the disappearance of Neanderthals, it is still a question that is highly researched and looked into, so there is a possibility that one day we'll know for sure. In our number 2 spot today, we have tuberculosis. Tuberculosis has been around for years and has wreaked quite a havoc on our world, but its history goes back farther than we may have thought. The disease was well documented in ancient Egypt, as mummies have been found with signs of the bacteria dating back 6,000 years, but scientists have begun being able to trace it back even farther than that to the Neolithic transition. This is the time when humans began taking part in agriculture and began domesticating more animals, and for a while it was believed that tuberculosis may have originated in these animals and then it was passed on to humans. Well, as it turns out, this may not even be the beginning of the disease, as it is now believed that it emerged in humans 70,000 years ago. It is quite a mystery how it has managed to survive this long, as it needs a human host, but it also usually kills the human who is infected with it. But researchers believe that around 20,000 to 30,000 years ago, the bacteria evolved to be able to go dormant in the human host, only to re-emerge decades later. This information is not only crazy, but it may help researchers with the fight against the bacteria in our modern society. In our number 1 spot today, we have the fight for food. In the other parts of these videos, we have talked a lot about the hunting patterns of the early humans, as they obviously did things very differently than we do today, but after scientists were able to piece together what a habitat would have looked like for a human 1.8 million years ago, they have been able to really show what life was like back then. One thing we don't often think about is how much competition there would have been for the early humans to get their food. Without high-powered machinery, humans are certainly knocked down a few pegs in terms of their ability to hunt, and there are other animals on this planet that are much better and naturally equipped. This is what led to there being multiple ways of hunting, because it was a highly stressful activity for them. Sometimes it was better to just scavenge what was left over from a large carnivorous predator, as it could be a huge risk going out and hunting your own meat in fear of becoming the meal. The recreation of the habitat also led researchers to learn more about the lives of the earliest humans and how they ate and drank. It is also believed that when they did go out to hunt their own meat, they most likely brought it back to safer places in order to feast on their kill.
We live in a time now where if you get hurt or sick, you can walk down to the doctor.
There's gonna be a part 2 to this coming out next week. I'm gonna keep one video a week now. Come visit me on Twitch, on Swamp Monkey's channel on Twitch. I'll have the links and stuff all on my channel. This is Most Amazing Top 10. Please go find them. Give them a like on this stuff. Go follow them. They are 100% one of my favorite channels to watch. I like to thank you all for being so patient. With my new videos popping up soon. Just ran out of ideas, and I'm not trying to do the norm, but kinda playing into the algorithm a little bit. But this was an interesting video. A lot of stuff that was kind of regurgitated towards me that I already knew about human history. I'm not saying I'm the most intelligent person, but human history is usually one of my go-tos, plus with animal history and stuff like that. These are videos that I started to watch when I was a kid, so refreshing my mind on this stuff is interesting to bring to you guys. So I would end here. Going to end here. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell for new stuff coming up. I hope to see you guys in the next video. And